Not too long ago, I had something really strange happen. It was just a few weeks back, and I came home from work one day just like any other. I live by myself in an apartment, and I've lived here for about 2 years. It's a decently nice place. Probably 10 or 20 minutes after arriving back from work, at about 4 in the afternoon, there was a knock on my front door. I went over and opened it up to see a woman standing there who I did not recognize. She said that she had witnessed somebody seemingly trying to break into my car just minutes prior. I was told by her that she saw me leaving my car, and a man then walked by several minutes later and tried the doors and windows. She said she just wanted to let me know. Of course, I was very concerned about it. I wanted to know who and why someone would try to break into my vehicle, although I didn't really have much of anything worth stealing in the car. So I left my apartment, and then the woman walked out with me to my car. I always parked in the large parking lot right outside of the apartment building in usually the same space. Lots of other cars were in the parking lot as well. When we got to my car, thankfully it looked fine. None of the windows were smashed or anything, and the doors were all closed and locked, so it looked like the man didn't get in. And after seeing this and looking around, I didn't see the guy that the lady had described. So I told her thanks, and then I went back into the apartment building. That was weird enough, but things got weirder. The next morning, when I was leaving for work like usual, I noticed one other car running a little ways away in the parking lot. The car was kind of behind me and up against the end of the parking lot. I didn't think anything of it. However, when I was driving away and I went past it, for whatever reason I looked over. I'm not really sure why I did, but I noticed that the same woman appeared to be behind the wheel who had talked to me. I assumed that she just lived in the complex. Now, I had never seen her before prior to when she showed up at my door, but the building was fairly large and I certainly didn't know everybody inside of it. I didn't see her for the rest of that day. The next day though, when I got home from work, I parked in the same space that I usually do. Just seconds after parking, a car entered the lot and parked against the back of the lot behind me a ways. I looked over and saw that it was the same woman. She was parked in the same general spot that I had seen her before. Remembering the previous events, I did not get out of my car right away. I wanted to see what she would do, so I stayed inside of my car. When I did, she did the same thing. After 10 minutes, the woman had not gotten out of her vehicle, and neither did I. It was almost like she was watching me or something. Finally, I got tired of waiting, and I got out and I went in. The woman stayed in her car the entire time. By this point, I didn't know if I was being paranoid or if something weird was going on. I just tried to forget about everything. The next day, I didn't notice the woman at all, but the following one, I was staying up really late. It was much later than I usually do, probably like 1 or 2 a.m. I was just hanging out in the living room and watching movies on TV. Out of nowhere, I heard this noise that sounded like somebody was trying to open the door to my apartment. I looked over to the door and saw the knob starting to turn. Luckily, it was locked and it didn't open. I had no idea who would be trying to enter my place. I certainly don't have any friends that would just walk in. I expected someone to maybe knock on the door or something after that, but nobody did. I quietly got up from the couch and walked over to the door. When I got there, I looked through the peephole. I saw the same woman standing there on the other side. I could not believe it. Why was she trying to just enter my apartment in the middle of the night? I almost opened the door and confronted her, but I decided not to. Instead, I just kept watching her. She stood there right in front of my door for maybe 30 seconds. Then she just turned and walked away. I was left very confused, and since then, I haven't seen her. I don't know why this woman is seemingly stalking me. I'm pretty sure that she does not even live in the apartment complex. I've looked in the general area of the parking lot where she parked those times, and I haven't seen her car. I even saw a few of my neighbors in the hallways, and I asked them if they had ever seen the woman or know if she lives in the building. Nobody knew her. I'm hoping that I never see her again. I'm a female, and this happened one summer when I was home from college. During the summer, I was living at my parents' house and working at a retail store nearby. I remember that at one point, pretty early on, some guy messaged me on Instagram. I didn't pay his profile too much attention, but I could see that he was much older than me and that I didn't know him. He just said hi to me, but I did not respond. I've had random guys message me over the years, and usually I just ignore it, and most of the time they don't message again. However, this guy did not give up. He sent me another message on Instagram saying hi, and then a third one when I didn't respond to that. After that, I got annoyed and I blocked him, and I thought that was that, but that was not that. Probably the next day after I blocked him, I got a friend request from the same guy on Facebook. I declined it. I should have blocked him right then and there on Facebook, but I didn't. The next day, I saw that he had liked a bunch of my posts on Facebook and commented on some of my really old pictures and posts. He was making comments on the pictures of me, but he was also telling me to accept his friend request and stuff in the comments. At that point, I deleted all of his comments and then I blocked him on Facebook as well. I really didn't know who he was, but I didn't really care either. He was being a creep and shouldn't be messaging me when I clearly didn't want anything to do with him. After that, things were fine for a few days. But one day, when I was at work, he showed up at my job. The first time I saw him there, I didn't recognize him. I'd only seen his profile picture from the times that I was blocking him. I thought that he was just an average guy shopping at the store, and I wouldn't remember him from his picture. I was working as a cashier, but the guy approached me with no items, so I knew something was up. He then said hi and brought up the Facebook and Instagram stuff. He asked me why I kept blocking him, and he claimed to be a nice guy. That's when I realized who it was, and I was really creeped out, because to tell you the truth, I didn't even think this guy lived in the same state as me. I thought it was just some random guy on the other side of the country stalking me on social media. So when he said that in the store, I really didn't expect it. I remember he started asking me what time I was off of work and stuff. I did not tell him, and I told him instead that I was not interested and said that he should leave. At first, he acted all defensive and asked what my deal was, but eventually he walked away and left. However, he showed up at my job again several days later. This time, he did not come up to me and talk, but just walked around the store. I saw him pretending to shop and then look over at me a few times. He stayed there for about 30 minutes and then he left without buying anything. After that, I told my boss about it, and my boss said to let him know if the guy came back in the store. Well, luckily, I didn't see him in the store again. However, just a few days after this, I got home from work one night at about 8 p.m. or so. My parents were gone someplace, and so I was home by myself. About an hour after I got home, at roughly 9 o'clock, I heard a knock on the front door to the house. I left my bedroom and went to the living room window to look outside and see who was there before answering. When I did, I saw that the same guy was there. This was really creepy because I had no idea that he actually knew where I lived. I didn't waste any time and I got out my phone and I called the police. I told him that some guy was stalking me and he now showed up at my house. Then I went back to my bedroom and waited for the police to get there. For the next 10 minutes or so, I was on the line with the 911 operator. Thankfully, the man didn't break in or anything. Soon the police got there. They found the man in the backyard trying to find a way to enter the house. He was arrested and I told the police the whole story about him stalking me. I'm really glad that he was caught. I haven't seen the man since, and he's still not allowed within a good distance of me. I work a pretty typical office job in the city, and I live in a house about 15 minutes away. I drive the same route every day, and there's usually traffic by the city obviously, but closer to my house there's much less, especially in my neighborhood. I tell you this because one day I noticed this random woman following me home. For most of the drive I obviously didn't notice, but when I started approaching my neighborhood, things got quiet, and I noticed the same car making all the same turns as me. Eventually, we reached my street. I knew many of the cars that lived on my street, and this wasn't one of them. I looked in my mirror and saw a woman with blonde hair driving, but she was wearing sunglasses. On that first time that I noticed her, I just drove to my house as usual and pulled into my driveway. She drove right past, but did slow down a little. I wasn't 100% sure that she was following me, but I thought that she was. The very next day, I was driving home from work again, and I noticed the same car. This time, I thought that she had to be following me for sure, so when I got to my neighborhood, before pulling onto my street, I went around the block once. The car followed me the entire way, proving that this woman was deliberately following me. Then I went to my street again and pulled into my driveway. Once more, like the previous day, she just drove past. I kept an eye out my window that night a few times, but didn't see her or anything suspicious. So the next night, I noticed her following me again. I was getting frustrated now, and I decided to confront her. When I was almost to my neighborhood, I pulled over on the side of the road. At first, she started to pull over as well. Then she abruptly veered back onto the road and drove away. I continued with the rest of my drive home, not noticing her again that night. I was glad that she had stopped following me then, but she did also know where I lived anyways. I was trying to figure out who she was and stuff, and I didn't recognize her from what I saw, and I really couldn't think of anything. The next day after work, she was driving behind me once again. Now I really couldn't believe it. So many days in a row she was just following me home from work. Did this woman have nothing better to do? So around the same spot as the night before, I once again decided to pull over to the side of the road. That seemed to work the previous day. When I did so this time, however, she pulled over completely as well. Both of our cars then sat there on the side of a pretty quiet street. I then decided to get out. I was going to confront her and get to the bottom of it, but just as I stepped out, I saw the two rear doors of her car open up. These two large men both got out. They were much bigger than me and not nice-looking guys at all. I had a bad feeling, and I decided quickly to get back into my vehicle, so I jumped in and then quickly drove away from there. I saw in my mirror, though, the men running back to the car. They got in, and soon the lady started following me again, and they were quickly able to catch up with me. At that point, I called the police. I reported how the same woman kept following me and stuff. I gave my address of where I was driving, and I was told that the police were on their way. Unfortunately, though, the woman stopped following me before the police arrived. She just randomly turned and went out of my sight. I still talked with the police about it that night. Unfortunately, there wasn't really much that could be done. I didn't get her license plate number, and I just knew the car type and very basic description of the people. The next day was a Saturday, so I didn't have to go to work. Instead, in the morning, I took my dog on a walk around the neighborhood. I try to walk my dog as much as possible, and he loves the exercise. So I remember that I got near a park just a couple of blocks from my house. As I was approaching the park, I saw two men walking down the street towards me. They were a long ways away, but I soon recognized them to be the same two men who had gotten out of the car with the woman. When I noticed them, I turned around and just sprinted with my dog all the way back home. I was able to make it, and I'm not even sure if the men chased me or not. I didn't see them or the woman for the rest of the day, and after that, I haven't seen any of them since. I haven't been followed home and haven't seen the lady or those guys. It's all very strange. I'm not sure what was going on there, why I kept getting followed, or what the men wanted. When I lived in the city, I would walk to and from work every day. It took about 15 minutes, and I disliked it when the weather was really cold, but normally it wasn't too bad. I would just take sidewalks and go along city streets to make it to my job. I obviously had an apartment that I lived in, and I lived there for several months. Some strange things happened, and I think I was being stalked though. The first time that I noticed it was one night when I got off of work kind of late. Normally, the sidewalks would not be super busy, but there were always people walking behind me. It's a pretty large city, and people are always out. However, sometimes I do work late, and in the really late hours, only a couple of other people might be walking. So when I was maybe like halfway back on this night, for whatever reason, I glanced behind me. I wasn't even aware of anybody being back there. But when I did, I saw a man walking down the sidewalk a long ways back. For some reason, he just looked suspicious to me. Maybe it was because he was wearing all dark clothing, a hooded sweatshirt, and looking down at the ground with his hands in his pockets. He was a really long ways back though, so I didn't get a great look at him. I kept walking, and like 5 minutes later, I turned around a corner and happened to hear footsteps a ways back. I looked over and saw the same guy, but now slightly closer. Over the next part of my route home, I turned 2 times in a matter of 2 blocks. To my surprise, the man made both of these turns with me. Now I was getting kind of suspicious. It was literally just the 2 of us on these streets, so I started walking faster. I really did not want this guy following me all the way to my building. After speeding up, I turned a corner super fast and then went into an alleyway. Then I went to the end of it and literally ran to another street. I was confident that I had lost the guy by then, and then proceeded with my route home. I made it back safely without seeing the guy. I was happy that I had lost him. About a week later or so, I got off of work kind of late again. It wasn't as late as the previous time that I was followed, so there were a few more people out on the sidewalks. But once again, I noticed what appeared to be the same guy walking a ways behind me. He made all the same turns that I did leading up to my building, and he was about the same distance from me as before. Once more, I'm pretty sure at the exact same spot, I tried to lose him again. I ran around a corner, went through an alleyway, and then out to another street, and once more, it seemed to work. I didn't see the guy, so I quickly then walked the rest of the way back home. I was able to make it back to my apartment safely. Once I was inside though, my phone started ringing. It was later at night, so I didn't know why somebody would be calling me. I looked, and it was from a number that I didn't know. I answered out of curiosity, already feeling creeped out. When I did, I just heard breathing on the other end. I wasn't sure who it was. I asked who was there multiple times, but got no answer. Then they hung up on me. After that, I was really freaked out by the whole thing and started taking a cab to and from work. This seemed to work, and I didn't get followed or see the guy. But not long into this, and I received another phone call from the same number late at night. It was the same thing as before, just breathing on the other end before someone hung up on me, whoever it was. I blocked the number. I have to think that person and the person following me were linked. In fact, I think it was probably the same guy. It's too crazy for it not to be. So after that, I ended up moving to a different city just about a month later. I didn't move because of the incidents, but because of my job. I would have to move sort of frequently, but I was actually glad to get out of that city for the possible guy stalking me. Nothing like that has happened since. I live alone in a smaller house in a busy neighborhood. This is something that happened not too long ago. I remember that one day I was outside doing some gardening. I love plants, and I like to take care of the small garden that I have in the front yard. As I was tending to it, I noticed a man walking down the street out front. It's a busy neighborhood, like I said, so nothing was unusual there. I didn't recognize the guy, but that was not a big deal either. However, I noticed him walking back from the other direction just about 10 minutes later. Then I saw him again walking back like 5 to 10 minutes after that. The guy didn't really seem to be walking with much purpose either. He was just kind of looking around, and I remember that we made eye contact for a second before he looked away. Just his behavior struck me as a little suspicious. After he walked away that time though, he did not return for the rest of the time that I was outside that day. I forgot all about him until a few days later when I was outside doing some gardening again. When I was out there, I saw him walking by again. This time, he stopped and appeared to be looking at me. I saw him and I stopped, wondering why he was just staring at me. At that point, he started to walk towards my yard. I walked over to him and met him at the edge of my property. The guy said hi and told me that he was a neighbor. I said hi, and then he basically just said bye and walked down the street again. He seemed kind of strange, but I didn't think too much of it. I just went back to gardening. I do remember him walking by again as I was gardening there though. Several days went by and I didn't see him, although I didn't go out gardening on those days. Then, one night, I was woken up very late to a sound. The first thing I remember was hearing this weird noise from a back window leading to the living room. I got up from my bed and went to my bedroom doorway. That's when I heard glass breaking. It wasn't very loud like it was being smashed, but instead quieter. I could still tell that it was being broken though. I realized that somebody was breaking into my house. I closed my bedroom door and locked it, and then quickly got my phone and called the police. I reported a break-in and went to the far back corner of my room away from the door. I sort of heard someone walking in the house, but hoped that they wouldn't go near me. I tried to stay quiet and hide in my room. After maybe 2 or 3 minutes, I heard footsteps in the hallway. They got closer to my bedroom door, and I was terrified. Soon, whoever it was tried the handle, which was locked. After the door didn't open, they slowly walked away. I hoped this meant they were leaving, but it didn't. Just about 2 or 3 minutes after that, I heard footsteps approaching in the hallway again. But before they reached my door, they once again turned around and walked away, this time rather quickly. Around that same time, I also heard cars driving down the street outside. I realized that the police had gotten there. The person in my house tried leaving, but they were caught. It turned out to be the same man who I kept seeing walking by when I was gardening. And as it turns out, he was not even a neighbor. He lived in the next city over, but he had somehow been stalking me for weeks. They found photos of me in his house, some from my social media and others taken of me gardening without my knowledge. I was very creeped out by that, but I'm really glad that the guy was caught. So for context, I'm a 34-year-old female, and this took place in 2007. I was around 18 at the time and in college. I had just graduated and my apartment lease wasn't up yet, so I decided to stay until it was, which was a horrible decision. To understand the story, I need to tell you about the apartment layout. When you walk through the front door, there's a flight of stairs leading to the actual main floor of my apartment. And once you go up those stairs, you have a full view of my living room and the balcony door. And if you were to go out of the balcony door, there's a wooden divider on the left-hand side that separates my balcony from my neighbors. My neighbors were an old couple that had been there longer than I had. I never really interacted with them, so I had no clue what was to come. It started on the night that I had just bought my new car. I was standing outside on my balcony reading the owner's manual while on the phone with my mom, and it was snowing slightly. I suddenly felt a warm breeze of air and a wicked smell of whiskey. I turned my head only to be face to face with a man leaning over the wooden divider that separates me from my neighbors. I practically jumped out of my skin and hung up on my mom without saying anything. "Hey, I'm Jake." The man was holding out his hand to mine. Hi," I said. "So what are you doing out here in the cold?" he replied. "Oh, just reading a book," I said with a forced smile. Then, as suddenly as he appeared, he vanished. I immediately grabbed my phone and book and went inside. That was that for the night. Then the next day, I was getting ready for work and then went outside to get the mail. When I did, I saw a note sticking out of my mailbox. I pulled it out and it said something along the lines of, "You are very beautiful, can I take you out on a date?" And his name signed at the bottom of the letter. I walked inside and put the letter on my counter, feeling very confused. Then I left for work. Later that night, I was in my room reading a book until I heard screaming coming from my neighbor's apartment. They were all yelling at each other, and then I heard Jake say to his mom that he would slit her throat. A chill went down my spine as I heard this, and then I heard my neighbor's sliding glass door slam shut and footsteps on their balcony. Mind you, my bedroom wall is right next to their balcony, and I can hear everything. Then I could smell the smell of cigarettes and whiskey again. I somehow fell asleep eventually, but then woke up to use the bathroom. I sat up and began to walk out of my bedroom door. After you do, you have to walk past the sliding glass door, and then the bathroom is right across from the door. So anyways, as I'm walking towards the bathroom, he yells at me, "Get back in bed, Birdie." When he called me Birdie, it made me want to leave the apartment and never come back. I rushed into the bathroom, then a few minutes later came back out and practically ran to my bed. I was only 18 and wasn't the smartest when it came to choices like this, so I ended up going to sleep, then woke up early the next day and felt a cold breeze. I immediately shot up and my eyes darted around the room looking for the source. I didn't find anything, so I walked out into my kitchen/living room and saw it. The balcony door was wide open and there was a note on my kitchen counter. I shut the door and saw that the lock was missing from the door handle, but that was the least of my worries because my apartment had just been broken into. I picked up the note with shaky hands and read it. It was a whole paragraph about how I should go on a date with him, and at the bottom of the paper it said, "P.S. I promise you won't regret it." The rest of the day, I was paranoid that he would come back and do something. Later that night, I was once again on the phone with my mom, and then I suddenly heard running and pounding on my walls. That creep was running down the hallway and pounding on my walls and doors. I told my mom that on the phone, and she told me not to answer it. Then I walked towards my door and just stood there as he pounded and yelled from the other side. A few minutes went by, and then it stopped. I told my mom I had to go. Then I walked back to my living room and froze at what I saw. There he was, standing in the middle of the room, staring at me. "Why didn't you answer the door?" he said in a cold tone. "I was in the shower," I said back, clearly lying. "Okay." Then he climbed around the divider and left, and I never saw him again. A week later, my lease was up for my apartment, and I talked to my landlord. He told me that the man, Jake, had no permission to be on the property, since the limit of people in one apartment was 2 and my neighbor had 3. So after I moved all my stuff, about a month went by without any problems. Then my landlord randomly called me and told me how a young couple moved into my old apartment, and the man had broken in several times and even smashed their windows. Goes to show how crazy and dangerous people can actually be. So random man named Jake, Let's never meet again. Last year, I had a really creepy experience. For a little background, I live by myself and have a house. This was the same situation for when this story occurred. It all started when I was at home one night. It was probably like 9 or 10 p.m. Usually I stay up kind of late, so I wasn't about to go to bed or anything. But when I heard a knock on my front door, I did think it was unusual. I walked over and looked out the window. There was a woman standing there. I was unsure if I should open the door or not. I waited to see if she would walk away, but about a minute later, she knocked on the door again. I decided to answer and opened up the door for her. She had long blonde hair, looked to be in her 20s, and was wearing a black sweatshirt. Right when I opened up the door, she asked me if she could come inside. I asked her why. The woman responded, saying that there was some guy that was after her. I told her that I could call the police, but she interrupted me and asked me again if she could just come inside. I didn't let her though. I suggested calling the police again, but she said no. When I asked her why not, she just turned and walked away rather quickly. I was pretty confused. I looked around, trying to see if there was a man anyplace. I didn't see one though. The woman went down the street and was quickly out of my sight. I went back inside after that and then went to bed. By the next day, I had forgotten about the encounter for the most part. I went to work as usual, but after that I was home again and it was later at night. I was in my living room and just noticed out the window somebody walking by out front. It was the same woman as the night before, and she was walking on the street in front of my house. I was not aware of her living in my neighborhood. I had never seen her before until the night prior. It was also unusual for people to walk on the side of my street, so this was overall a very strange situation. When she was in front of my house, she kind of stopped and looked at my house. I noticed this, and then she seemed to kind of notice me looking at the window at her. Then she kept walking past my house down the street. I wasn't quite sure who she was or why she was hanging around my neighborhood all of a sudden. I thought perhaps she had moved in down the street or something, but honestly, I had no idea. I saw her again the very next day though. This time I was driving to work, and I remembered that after making it out of my neighborhood, a car was driving behind me. For whatever reason, at the stoplight, I looked at the car behind me in my mirror. The driver looked an awful lot like the woman who I kept seeing. I was almost positive that it was her, but she was wearing sunglasses, so I wasn't quite 100%. It was strange to see her again though, but I didn't even have the thought that she was following me in her car. But as I kept driving, I noticed her making all of the turns that I did. Eventually, I was like 90% there and she was still driving behind me. By now, I was about 99% sure that she was the same woman. It took me about 15 minutes to get to work, and when I got there, she pulled into the parking lot after me. I was shocked. I knew she didn't work here, but when I drove into where I always parked, she drove through the lot a different way. Her car went out of my sight, and I couldn't tell if she was parking or driving away. I just went into work and didn't see her for the rest of the time that I was at work that day or when I was leaving. And for the next 2 days, I didn't see her at all. And I was even a little more suspicious during those 2 days and would look out of my windows a little bit more at night. But I didn't see her at all. Then, one night, once again, I was home by myself. Except this time, it was later, probably a little bit after midnight. I was just about to go to sleep and in my bed. That's when I heard a sort of loud noise. It was coming from what sounded like outside, near the back of my house. I got up and went out to my doorway. That's when I heard another loud noise. This time, it was clear that it came from the back window. Somebody was hitting it with something. I didn't know who it was or what they were doing, so I stayed in my bedroom. I closed the door and then I called the police and told them that I thought somebody was trying to break into my house. A short time later, I heard another loud noise, and then it sounded like somebody was inside. I stayed in my room and quickly locked the door. Whoever was inside of my house slowly walked around, but soon I heard them opening a door a ways away. They never really got that close to my bedroom. Then I stopped hearing any noises. It took me a while to realize that they had likely gone into my basement. For the next 5 minutes or so, everything was silent. Then the police arrived. I ran out of my room to let them in. Once they entered, I let them know that I thought somebody was in my basement. They went down, and a short time later came out with the same woman who I kept seeing. I should have known it was her. I was glad that she wouldn't be bothering me anymore, but I never got an answer. Why was she seemingly stalking me? I still don't know. I'm a female, and the story happened about 2 years ago. I switched jobs around that time, after working in one office building for about a year and a half. There was a better job opportunity for me, so I took it. Now, the first office that I had worked in was not a bad job. I liked most of my coworkers, and there were quite a few people that were in the building. When I started my new job, though, I liked it even more. But not long after starting, one day I got a text from one of my old coworkers. It was a man named Jeremy. Jeremy worked in the office and occasionally would talk to me, but not a whole lot. I always thought that he was a little bit weird and creepy. Several other people around the office did too. It was just based on his personality and some of the things that he would say or do. So he texted me asking me to hang out. It was kind of out of nowhere, and I didn't know why he would do that. I wasn't sure how to respond. Before I did though, he texted me again. I guess I took too long to reply, and he accused me of ignoring him because I had seen the text but not yet responded. It had only been like 2 hours. I finally responded and told him that I would not be available to hang out with him. He asked me why not, and I said that I was just really busy with work and stuff. He didn't respond to me for a few days after that. I forgot about it and didn't think that he would text me again. But then he called me on my cell phone. I was not expecting it and didn't answer. The call was sometime at night, but not that late. After he called me, he left a message. I remember when I played it, I got really creeped out. In the message, he was talking to me about how he knew I wasn't too busy to hang out with him. He said that he knew I didn't even work the previous day and didn't go anywhere. And he was right. I didn't have work and hadn't gone anywhere. But how did he know that? I realized that he must have somehow drove to my house or something. So I texted him, asking him how he knew that I had stayed home the previous day. I remember right after I sent it, I saw the 3 dots indicating that he was typing. This went on for a while and then disappeared without a text. He didn't respond. After that, I started to pay more attention to outside when I was home. The next night, shortly after getting back home from work, I noticed a car parked on the side of the road. It was in one corner which had a good view of my house. I couldn't see inside the car or who was driving or anything. It was too far away, but I was suspicious. Nothing else weird happened that night though. But the next night, I received another phone call from Jeremy, this time at 1 o'clock in the morning. I didn't hear it or see it until the next morning because I had been asleep. He did not leave a message though. I texted him asking him why he called me at 1 a.m. and why he was being so weird. He did not respond, so I decided to block him, something that I should have done long before. But I thought maybe he would give me some sort of explanation or something. For the next couple of days, everything was fine. Then I got back home sort of late from work. Afterwards, I was just planning to go to bed and was really tired. But about 20 minutes after arriving back to my house, I heard a knock at the front door. I walked over and looked to see Jeremy standing there. I foolishly decided to answer. I was thinking that I could talk to him and be clear that I wanted him to leave me alone. As soon as I opened up the door, Jeremy rushed inside and started to grab me. We struggled very briefly, and I was able to free myself. It all happened so fast, it's kind of a blur in my memory. I just remember him charging at me, and then I got away. I ran outside of the house, which was my first instinct for some reason. Jeremy started to go after me. I ran through my front yard and into the street. Then I went into my neighbor's yard across the street. But surprisingly, Jeremy stopped chasing me when he got to the street. I saw that he ran in a different direction. Then he ran to the corner and got inside of a car and drove away. I went back inside after that and called the cops. They came out a short time later, and I told them everything I could about Jeremy. Long story short, I got a restraining order against him, and he hasn't bothered me since. My name is Francisco, and I used to work at a sporting goods store when I was younger. This was back when I was like 19 or 20, and lived with my parents when I wasn't at college. I held the job at the sporting goods store since my senior year of high school, and I worked there for about 3 years total. During, I believe, my first summer break from college, there was a newer employee to the store. It was a girl named Emma. She was around my age and was short, had dark hair, and I didn't know anything about her other than that. We didn't have a whole lot of employees at our store. There would maybe be about 5 to 7 of us working at once. Usually 2 at the check lanes and the rest around different departments of the store. I'm not sure exactly when Emma got hired, but she worked there when I got back from college. We worked together a handful of times. I would work both as a cashier and in some other departments as well. A few times I spoke briefly with Emma, but not too much. She seemed cool for the most part, but not really the type of person that I would usually hang out with. I remember that one night, I guess Emma and I both got off at the same time. I believe it was 9 p.m. I had been working near the golf department, and she was in another part of the store. As we were both clocking out, she asked me if I drove there, and I replied that I did. She then asked me if I could give her a ride home. I didn't mind too much, but asked first where she lived. It was a city that was not that far away from mine, and was maybe like 5 minutes out of the way, so not a huge deal. I said yes, and then we left the store together. We got into my car, and she gave me the address to her house, which I drove to. The place was an older-looking apartment complex, where she said that she lived with her boyfriend. She was nice and told me thanks for giving her a ride, and then I left and went home. I didn't think much of the interaction. Now, I worked the next day, an earlier shift. My availability was pretty much all day on most days, because it was summer and I didn't have school. Emma was not working on this day though. I remember that it was like 12 o'clock in the afternoon or something. The store was not very busy, as it usually was quiet at this hour. I was working towards the back, stocking one of the shelves near the baseball equipment. I saw this guy enter the aisle and start aggressively walking over to me. He had dark short hair, like a buzz cut, and the guy was not that tall, but somewhat strong looking. He looked right at me and asked me who I thought I was. I told him I had no idea who he was or what he was talking about. The guy told me that he was Emma's boyfriend and accused me of, quote, trying to take his girl. I realized that there must have been some huge misunderstanding of what happened. Either that or this guy was an extremely jealous boyfriend who didn't trust Emma at all. I really didn't want to get in the middle of their problems. He was like right up in my face, asking if I thought I was a tough guy. I told him to calm down and said I didn't do anything with Emma. I told him she simply asked me for a ride home from work, so I gave her one. The boyfriend then told me that his car was working fine, and she could have asked him. I told him I didn't know that, and further said that I didn't even know she had a boyfriend until she told me the previous night. He seemed to actually calm down a bit. I told him I could assure him that I was not trying to steal his girl, and he had nothing to worry about. He told me that he better not, quote, catch me tripping again, and then he walked away. After the interaction, I was really surprised that he got so angry. I also started to wonder if Emma was stuck in a bad relationship or something. The next time I worked with her was a couple of days later. When I saw her, I walked over and said hi. I told her about what her boyfriend did, and she said sorry, but he gets like that sometimes. I asked her if everything was okay in their relationship. That's when she told me that she actually broke up with him the day before, which would have been the day after he confronted me. She also said that she moved back in with her parents. I told her sorry, and she said that she was fine and happy to be moving on. So after that, I went back to work and didn't see Emma for the rest of my shift. That night, Emma got off at like 7 and I got off at 9 again. After clocking out, I walked through the parking lot to my car. When I got in my car and left, I was followed home by Emma's ex. I know this because the car was parked not that far away from me in the parking lot. I noticed it because the parking lot was almost empty, and after getting inside my car when I started to drive away, the other car left right after me. Because of our 2 cars being basically the only ones around, I found this a little bit odd. Then when I left, the car made all of the first 3 or 4 turns that I did. When we got to a stoplight, I looked back to see the man was driving. I didn't get an exact look at his face with it being night, but he resembled Emma's boyfriend. I drove the rest of the way home until I got to my street. Then I wasn't really sure what to do. I went around the block twice, with him staying on my tail. Finally, I decided to just pull into my driveway, and I did so and then got out of my car. He pulled into the driveway after me, but I sprinted out of my car really quickly and around the house into the backyard. I didn't look to see what the guy did. I knew that my parents usually kept the sliding glass door in our backyard unlocked, so I quickly got in the house that way. When I looked, the man didn't chase me. I shut the door and then locked it, and then I covered it with blinds. Then I went back around to the front window and looked out. When I did, I saw that the guy was getting back into his car, and he then drove away. I also confirmed that it was in fact Emma's ex-boyfriend. I thought about calling the police, but decided not to. I hoped that this guy would just realize there was no reason to go after me. I didn't work for a few days after that. I just happened to have some off days in a row, which was nice. In this free time, one of the days I went to the mall with a few friends. There was a really large mall not far away from where I lived. We were doing some shopping for a number of things, and I was having a great time until I noticed Emma's ex-boyfriend again, and I didn't think that this was just a coincidence. I didn't feel scared at all because I was with 3 of my friends. When we were in the food court, the guy was sitting a ways away at a table by himself. He was sort of facing us, and I pointed him out to my friends and told them the story. They said we should go up to him, but I said no. I didn't want a big fight to break out or something. So we stayed there and then left a while later. I saw him walking a ways behind us about 30 minutes after that at another location in the mall. It was really creepy. I was honestly so surprised that this guy was after me. Did he seriously think that I was responsible for his breakup? We left the mall later that day, and I didn't see the guy for the rest of it. The next time I worked, Emma also happened to be there. When I saw her, I walked up and asked her how she was doing. She told me that she was doing really good and was going to be moving to Seattle in 2 weeks. We lived in California, so that was a ways away. I told her, "That's great, but your ex-boyfriend is stalking me." She asked me why, and I said probably because he thinks I'm responsible for them breaking up. She said that was crazy and that I had nothing to do with it. I told her to tell him that then, but she said she had him blocked on everything and wasn't going to contact him. I realized that this guy was probably just taking all of his anger out on me, or at least was trying to. I was seriously considering getting the police involved. Once more, Emma got off before me, and I got off work later that night. I walked out to my car and saw another one parked by me again. It was the same guy. This was getting me really angry. But this time, when I got within maybe 10 feet of my car, Emma's ex got out of his. He then started walking over to me, all aggressive. I asked him why he kept following me around, and he didn't say anything. He just kept walking towards me. Then he got right up in my face again and took a swing at me. I moved, but he still got me a little in the side of the head. I took a swing at him, but missed. Then he got me good. I'm embarrassed to say, but I pretty much got the tar kicked out of me. In my opinion, it was clearly not his first fight. For me, it was my first fight since probably the 2nd grade. So he hit me like 4 or 5 times, and I maybe got like 1 or 2 punches to him, which didn't seem to hurt him much. I fell to the ground, and after that, he then walked off and went back into his car. I was just glad that he didn't kick me while I was down. Then he drove off. I gathered myself and then called the police and told them what happened. They came out to my location, and I ended up getting some medical aid on the scene, but overall I was fine. I only had some bruises and scrapes, and luckily no concussion or anything. Finally, I was able to go home. The police said that they would look into the guy. Well, the next day, I got word that he was arrested. Apparently, he already had a warrant for failure to appear on some other charge. I think it was theft, and he had a bit of a history of run-ins with the law. I also filed charges against him for assault. It was a huge relief that he was off the streets and would stop following me. I was really mad for a while about getting mixed up in that whole deal. Looking back, I'm just glad that I'm okay. Something extremely creepy happened to me about a month ago. For some brief background, I live by myself in a small house in a busy neighborhood. I've lived there for about a year, and it's been going well. I plan to move to a bit larger house in a nicer neighborhood once I have more money saved up. I work an office job with pretty standard hours. Well, one day, after getting back home from work, I got my mail like usual. There was an envelope in the mailbox that I didn't know where it came from. There were no stamps on it of any kind. I was curious about it, so I decided to open that one first. I went inside and opened up the envelope to see some pictures. They appeared to be printed on a piece of paper, not very good quality, like they were not developed or anything. But there were 5 different pictures, and they were all of me. One was of me walking on the sidewalk. Every day when I went to work, I had to park in a lot that was a few blocks from my work. Then I had to walk there on the side of the street. The city was usually pretty busy. The other photos were all of me as well. Some were me in the parking lot getting out of my car. The last one was me in my car at a stoplight. I was really creeped out by all of this. There were no words or writing, just these photos. I didn't know what to make of it. Was somebody stalking me? The pictures were taken from a decent ways away and appeared to be zoomed in a little bit. I had no idea as to where they were taken from though, or why this person was taking pictures of me at all. I was so creeped out though that I went to the police station that same night. I told them the story, that I got these pictures in an envelope in the mail with no explanation. I talked with the police for a while, but at the end of the day, not a whole lot could be done. I wasn't threatened or anything, and there was no law against taking pictures in public. They told me to keep them posted though, and try to see if I noticed anything strange. So over the next few days at work, I actually looked all around when I got out of my car and walked to and from the office, but it could have been anyone. There were so many buildings around and so many possible hiding places, but the good news over the next few days was that I didn't get any more pictures sent to me. But that changed about a week after the first batch. I got another envelope in my mailbox. This time, there were more pictures. 5 more, all of me once again. But this time, they were of me getting out of my car when I got home from work. I was terrified. This person knew where I lived. I looked around outside, but didn't notice anyone. My street could get pretty busy sometimes, so it would be easy to not be as noticeable. After that happened, I told the police again, but there still wasn't much that they could do. Now, after that happened, I haven't got another envelope. It's been about a month, and everything's been fine. I don't know if I will get any more, and if this person has stopped or what. It still really creeps me out though. I'm currently looking for another place to live, either apartment or another house. I also found a different parking lot for work. I'm not sure if that had any impact on the person not taking pictures of me or what. I still wonder though, who did that and why? Several years ago, I used to live in a small house near the city that I was renting. One day, I went to a pretty large mall near my house to do some shopping. I was there for a decent amount of time, maybe like 2 hours. I had just visited the last store that I was planning to for the day and was about to head home. As I was walking towards the exits, I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned around to see a man standing there. He was shorter, with glasses and a green jacket on. He said that he didn't want to alarm me, but he noticed that there was a man who appeared to be following me for a while. He said he noticed it when he was in the last store that I was in, and he saw a guy seemingly following me wherever I went. He said that when I left, the man did as well. He said the guy was a ways back now, standing near a bench with a black jacket on. I didn't really know what to say, other than thanks for the heads up. I had no idea that there was a guy apparently following me. The guy in the green jacket then walked away past me for the exit. The mall was pretty crowded, and I scanned my eyes around for a man in a black jacket, but I didn't notice one. He very well could have been there though, because there were probably 100 people in my line of vision with how busy the mall was on that day. I left the mall out to go to the parking lot where my car was, but I kept a careful eye out. The parking lot as well was crowded with tons of cars and some people walking in or going out. When I got to my car, I went inside and then looked around again. I didn't notice anything suspicious like somebody following me, but the whole time I drove home, I looked to make sure that there was no car following me for a long period of time. I wasn't followed home, and that made me feel a lot better. Maybe some random creep at the mall had followed me through one store. So what? I didn't even know if it was true. Maybe the guy that told me I was being followed was wrong. Anyways, over the next few days, everything was normal. But then, things changed one night. As I was at home, I got a phone call at nearly midnight. When I picked it up,
Whoever was on the other end of the line hung up almost immediately. This happened again several nights later, but this time it was even later at night. Then, the next week, I got a strange letter in the mail with no return address on it. It was an envelope addressed to me typed out on a computer. When I opened it up, there was literally nothing inside of it. Now I was starting to feel uncomfortable about things. Somebody was messing with me for some reason, and I had no idea who they were or why. It was the middle of the night, and I was fast asleep until I was awoken from the sound of a pounding coming from not the front door, but the back door of my house. It was extremely loud and was a fast, repeated banging noise. I got up and left my bedroom to go to the kitchen where the back door was. My heart was racing, but I had to see who was there. I was careful not to be in the view of the window of the back door and went to look out the window at the kitchen sink. I looked outside and could sort of see that there appeared to be a man there. He looked pretty big and was wearing a black jacket, but other than that, I couldn't see anything because it was really dark. I also didn't get a view of his face at all. This whole time, the pounding on the door continued. I returned to my room, and then my phone started to ring. I answered it, but didn't say a word. On the other end, I heard a deep voice say, "Let me in." I hung up immediately and was about to dial the police when the knocking stopped. I waited for a few minutes before going back into the kitchen and carefully looking out the window again. The man was gone, but I had no idea where he was now. I went around the house carefully and made sure that all of the window shades were covering all the windows and all the doors were locked. Then I went back into my bedroom. I stayed up for another hour, but nothing else happened. I didn't feel safe anymore at my house, and I stayed at my parents' house the next night and all the way up until the lease of my house was up, which was only a couple of weeks. After that, I moved into a new place. Since then, I haven't had any problems, but I still don't know who it was that was stalking me. I live by myself in a one-story house that I own. Last year, it was during the summertime, and I was sleeping with the window open a crack to let more cool air in. My bedroom is at the front side of the house, and there's a giant row of large bushes that are along the side of the house, and they stop just at the side of my window. I was woken up from my sleep when I heard the noise of rustling in the bushes. I'm a pretty light sleeper, but with the window open, the noise was rather loud. When I woke up, I looked to the window, but I kept my blinds down just above the roughly 3-inch crack in the window, so I really couldn't see outside at all. I flicked on the light, which was right at my bedside, and my room then lit up. I got out of bed and went to the window to see, but then I heard more rustling in the bushes. I didn't see anything as I walked over there, and I was quite confident that the noises were caused by an animal, likely a deer. There was a pretty big woods and a park bordering my next-door neighbor's backyard, so we would often get all kinds of wild animals wandering in our yards at night. When I got to the window, I lifted up the blinds and looked outside, but still didn't see anything. Whatever had been there was now gone. After that, I just went back to bed. Probably a couple of nights later, almost the exact same thing happened. I was once again sleeping and woke up in the night to the sound of the bushes moving. I had my window open a few inches again, and my blinds mostly down. Everything was just as it had been all week. I sat up and turned my lights on again. I looked to the window and just barely saw movement of something going away. I couldn't tell what it was at all because of how dark it was, but I had a feeling that maybe it wasn't an animal, but a person. I went over to the window and looked out of it again, but they were gone. This time, I closed the window and locked it and put the blinds down all the way. I was able to go back to bed after that without a problem. I was telling myself it was just an animal, but I just had a creepy feeling that it wasn't. The very next night, I was up late. It was a Friday night and I was watching TV in my bed. I hadn't put my blinds down yet because I wasn't ready to go to sleep. It was probably around 1 o'clock in the morning, and I saw something out of the corner of my eye. I turned and looked to the window. That's when I saw a man standing right there facing me, looking directly at me. He was wearing a white t-shirt and had long, sort of messy hair and a slight beard. When I saw him, he didn't run away. Instead, he started to approach the window. I ran out of the room to the farthest away location in the house that I could get to. Then I called the police. When I spoke with them, I told them everything. I even remembered to include how the man was likely at my house other nights too. Meanwhile, I didn't hear any more noises from the window or anything as I waited for the police, and when they arrived, they searched the entire property, but the man was now gone. I talked with them for a while, giving them all the details that I could, but ultimately, they left with me not feeling that much better. My only hope was the fact that the police showed up would scare the man from coming back. The next night, everything was fine, but the night after that, I woke up in the night to noise again. My window was closed now, so I would no longer hear the bushes moving. This time, I woke up to the sound of a bang against my bedroom window. It was a loud noise, as if somebody was trying to break the glass. I turned my light on and sat up. In the past, that scared the man off, but this time, it didn't. I heard another loud bang on the window. I couldn't see the guy because my blinds were closed, but I knew he was there, and I called the police again and ran out of the room. I couldn't believe how this guy would not leave me alone. There was then another loud bang from the window, and then another one moments later. This time, I heard the glass starting to break. I was so nervous that I ran to the front door and grabbed my keys. The next bang broke more glass, and the man was sure to get inside the house now. When I started to hear movement near the window, I opened my front door quietly, went outside, closed the door, and then sprinted out for my car. When I got inside, I started it and drove away from there. I drove around the block in nearby neighborhoods until I got another call from the police saying that they were there. When I returned, to my surprise, they had caught the man. It was a huge relief to me. He had broken into my house and smashed my window, and apparently was searching through the house for me and was found in my basement. This happened several months ago. I work in an office building in the city, and parking can be a little bit tough, so I often park at a ramp a few blocks away and walk the rest of the distance. I also usually take a walk during my lunch hour in the summertime, and I eat at a park bench. I pretty much always sit at the same bench every day. When I'm there, there's always other people in the park, but never too many. One day, when I arrived at the park, a woman was sitting in my bench. I didn't sit at the same bench, but instead sat at the one next to it. The woman was wearing sunglasses and had dark brown to blackish hair. Over the course of sitting there, we ended up starting a conversation. She asked if she could get my phone number. She said her name was Amy, and I didn't see the harm in it. I had a good time talking to her, so I gave her my number. She told me that she would call me later. She never did, though. After a few days went by, I hadn't heard from her, but I didn't mind really. In fact, I mostly forgot all about it. But one day, when I was leaving work, I had gotten to my car at the parking garage. I was getting inside when I thought I noticed Amy sitting in a car on the other side. I got in my car, then looked again. It was definitely her, and she was parked kind of far away. She had on her sunglasses again, and I thought about waving, but she seemed to be on her phone and really focused on something. Plus, she had never texted or called me, so I just drove away. Figured that she also parked in that parking lot for work, but I had never seen her in there before. Several days later, I was back home and cooking some food at night. Afterwards, I went into the living room to eat and watch some sports. When I did, I glanced out the front window. I saw a car parked on the street that usually wasn't there. Now normally, that's a detail that I wouldn't really care about, and I'm not sure why, but this time, I wanted to look at it. I went right up to the window and looked. There was a woman in the driver's seat with sunglasses on, and it looked a lot like Amy. I couldn't believe why she would be parked outside of my house on my street. It was very strange. I wanted to know what she was doing here, so I went outside to my front yard. As soon as I stepped outside, though, her engine started up, and when I got a few steps closer, she sped away. After that, I never saw her again. I never knew what her last name was, or if her first name was even really Amy. I still wonder if she was stalking me, or what.
Something crazy happened when I was in high school. It was during my junior year, and a few months into the semester. I'm a female and was 17 at the time. One day, like any other, I went to school and it was my 4th hour class. Sometime during the hour, I remember that an announcement suddenly came over the intercom. We were told that the school was being locked down. Our teacher did all the things she was supposed to, and locked the door and turned the lights off. Nobody really knew what was going on though. We all knew that it was not a drill, and everybody seemed a little bit worried. We all had no idea why the lockdown was happening. We just stayed in the room and things were very quiet for a while. After probably close to an hour, the lockdown finally ended. We were told that we would have the normal amount of passing time in the hallways, and then our final class of the day would be shorter than usual. So when we finally got let out of class, everybody was talking to each other about the lockdown. I was on my way back to my locker to drop my books off and get the ones for my next class. But before I could get there, I was pulled into the principal's office. I just remember that I saw the vice principal come up to me and ask if I could go with him. He said that I was not in trouble, so I followed him and we went to the principal's office. Then him and the principal both had me sit down and they told me what was going on. I was told that the school had been in a lockdown because a suspicious man had been seen inside the school during the class period. They went on to say that he was seen near the lockers, but ran away when questioned. Unfortunately, he somehow left the school before the police got there and had escaped. The grounds were searched, and he was not on or near school property anymore. But when he was inside, he had opened one locker, which happened to be mine. He had brought a bolt cutter, which he had used to break open my locker. This obviously could have been used as a weapon as well, but the man unfortunately escaped with it. I was asked if I knew anybody who would do that or why, but I didn't know anyone. When they gave a basic description of the man to me, I had no idea who it was. I was really just as confused as anyone. I told them that I didn't know. After that, I looked through my locker and nothing appeared stolen. I didn't really have much in there except for my books for school. So after that, the school day resumed. My parents got called, and when the school day was over, nobody seemed to know why the guy would do that. However, later on, something else occurred. It was that very same night. I remember that I was in my bedroom, which was at the back of our house. I was on my bed, just on my phone. But when I glanced out of the window randomly, I happened to notice something. It looked like somebody was walking through the backyard. I got up and moved over to the window. When I got a closer look, sure enough, there was a man there. I did not know who he was, but I noticed that he was walking towards me. I quickly ducked down so that he wouldn't see me. I then moved away from the window and hoped that the man would not approach it. But moments later, I saw him appear right on the other side and look in. I quickly ran out of my bedroom and found my parents. I wasn't sure if the man had directly seen me or not. Most of the lights in my room were off, other than one small lamp. I told my parents what was going on, and they looked out of a different window to the backyard. Then they called the police. My dad kept an eye on the guy out the window. The rest of us went to the front of the house. The police were really quick to respond. Within probably 5 minutes, they were there. And when they got there, the man was still prowling around the backyard. After they entered the back, the man tried running away. He made it out of our backyard, but not much farther. He ended up being caught. And we soon found out that it was the same man who had been at the school earlier. I didn't know who he was, but somehow it appeared as though he was stalking me. The whole thing was really crazy. I'm just glad that the guy was caught. I don't know what would have happened.